With that, I wanted to bring on Scott Dochterman. He's our media guest this week. He's the national college football reporter for The Athletic. Largely covers the Big Ten, but also votes along with the rest of the All-American Committee on our weekly Play and Team of the Week awards. Thank you, Scott, for joining us this morning. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Sam. I hope all is well and glad to be with you.
I appreciate you being here. I wanted to start by asking, I know you're covering kind of the Big Ten broadly as your role at The Athletic has grown, but you're still an Iowa guy, and I used to cover a lot of Iowa football. Big win for the Hawkeyes over the weekend. Tell me a little bit more about what's going on with this photo here with the pig trophy, and why is it so exciting to Iowa to be bringing that pig back home?
The Floyd of Rosedale trophy is, in my opinion, the best traveling trophy in college football and therefore in all sports. It has a rich organic tradition. It goes back to the 1930s. They had a tough game between each other in 1934, where Iowa had an African American running back who was hit pretty hard in that game because Minnesota in the 30s was like Alabama under Saban. And there was a lot of war of words the next year. The governor of Iowa allegedly said, if the officials don't take care of the Gophers, then the fans will. And immediately, as you can imagine, even in the 1930s, that went viral. It ended up on every front page in the Midwest, A1, above the fold, everything. And the governor of Minnesota, when he heard about it, because through the Associated Press wire, just within an hour or so of the comment, sent a telegram to the Iowa governor saying, look, I don't think you really meant what you said. Let's try to diffuse this. I'll bet a live hog from Minnesota against one of your prized hogs from Iowa for this game. And the Iowa governor accepted it. They had a great game. Minnesota won 13-6. And so Iowa's governor sent a live pig to Minnesota in 1935, had its own train cart sealed and everything, and met the governor there. And then they went to the governor's room and office, and then it kind of bounced around. It ended up dying a couple of years later of cholera, of all things. But 1936, Minnesota decided to incorporate that into a traveling trophy, like what they had with Michigan at the time, which was the little brown jug. And so the M Club put this trophy together. It's 98 pounds. It's bronze. And it is, again, Iowa has 4 traveling trophies with probably its 4 chief rivals. You could get rid of 3 of them and nobody would really complain. This one is the one that stands out most of all. So for Iowa, I've seen them play 3 times. I saw Minnesota play North Carolina in the opener. So, North Carolina gives up 17 in the game I was there, and they give up 70 this week. But Iowa looked in the second half like a team that we kind of expected would maybe challenge for a playoff spot, top 20 ranking, that type of thing. They really dominated the Gophers. And I think they're a team that, they play Ohio State a week from Saturday, but after that, they've got a chance to have a pretty good season.
You can see some of your other recent work here on the screen, obviously covering the Big Ten more broadly, but I know you had mentioned you're working on a piece for this week that even expands kind of beyond the Big Ten, looking at some of the 9, you mentioned 9 unbeaten power conference teams that are really off to kind of an unexpected start in some way. A few of the teams you mentioned are Illinois, Indiana, Pitt, UCF. Can you give us a few of the highlights of what that piece will look like when it posts later this week, and who some of those teams are that you've got your eye on and you're digging into?
Yeah, luckily it just posted a few minutes ago, so I was I thought it was going to be earlier this morning, but it turned out just a few minutes ago. But what I decided to do was every week on a Wednesday, I kind of look at some aspect of the playoff situation and and what potentially may or may not happen. And what I did today was I took a look at I think there's 26 undefeated teams left, and but 9, but then 20 of them are from major conferences. And out of that 29 were unranked going into the season. So I wanted to kind of look at these teams because you look at the other 11 and they're totally expected. There's 6 from the SEC, Miami, Utah, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, all those teams. everybody kind of looks at it and go, yeah, we kind of figured they'd be there. But out of the 9 that were unranked going into the year, I wanted to kind of examine their path forward, what they can and can't do, or what have you. And I looked, and first up, the highest ranked now of that group is Louisville, and they also have the most difficult path going forward. They have some injuries. They play Notre Dame this week. They've got some other schedules that I think are going to be awfully challenging for them. But among the rest, Iowa State is next at 18, and I do think that Iowa State's going to be very competitive, if not for the playoff, certainly for an 8-9 win season, maybe even 10 wins, which they've never done before. And part of that is because their schedule it gets dramatically more challenging. But I saw them live, and to see what they were able to do in Iowa and win 20-19 on a 54-yard field goal with 5 seconds left. They were trailing in a crazy environment, and yet they were able to come back, and they have a couple of NFL caliber wide receivers and a really good quarterback in Rocco Becht, Anthony Becht's son. So I really liked a lot of what I saw from them. But if there's a couple of surprises to me, it's probably from the Big Ten. In Indiana and Illinois. Both of them are off to some really tremendous starts, 4-0. Indiana is probably as big of a surprise as anybody because they have a new coach, James Madison's former coach, Kirk Cignetti. He brought a ton of, I think it was 12 players from James Madison, and which is equally surprising that James Madison put 70 on North Carolina without all those players. But they have definitely looked the part. This is a new regime and a new era for Indiana. They're an energized fan base now, kind of like they are on the basketball side, but they're seeing their team play at a level that they really haven't played at before, which is tenacious on both sides of the ball. They're attacking. They've got great quarterback play. Curtis Rourke used to be at University of Ohio, and they just. Kirk Cignetti has really changed the culture there very, very quickly. So, and Indiana's schedule is, this is a team you might be looking at some point in the season because they played Maryland, then Northwestern. They have a chance to go 6-0 just to start. And then later on, they play Nebraska, which had a really tough loss to Illinois, Washington at Michigan State. They finish here with Purdue. They do have Michigan and Ohio State towards the end of the season, but this is a team that would not surprise me at all if they won 9, even 10 games. They look the part. They're not surprising at all to me now, based on what I see. And at Illinois, had a really nice win. They're the only team that has 2 ranked victories thus far. And they do play, a top 10 team this week at Penn State, which will be whiteout energy, I guess, according to James Franklin. But they've also looked a little bit different. They're a quarterback who came from Ole Miss a couple years ago, Luke Altmaier, has 10 touchdowns, no interceptions, been very efficient. They run the ball well. They've got some good NFL caliber receivers. They've got a little bit more challenging schedule, I would say, than Indiana, but still their defense is much improved as well. So that's kind of the upper echelon. But then, kind of in the ACC realm, I think Pittsburgh has had the most interesting run thus far. They had to come back. I think they were down 17 points or something like that to Cincinnati and came back and won by 1. And then the backyard brawl was another classic, like they always seem to have. And I really wish they would play every year. I think they deserve to play every year. And they're 4-0. Got a really electrifying freshman quarterback in Eli Holstein. I think he could be a 3 or 4 year starter for them. Really, just a tremendous player, and had a lot of gutty efforts in those 2 games. So, and they have a bye week, then they play North Carolina and California. So and then Syracuse. So they've got a chance to be bowl eligible before they even hit November, which last year I think they only won like 3 games. And then in your guys' neck of the woods, UCF is really fascinating. I think this week is one of those games that everybody's going to watch that you would think, why am I going to watch this? Well, you've got UCF, which runs the ball better than anybody in the country, had a great comeback at TCU, and then they play what most people consider maybe the most interesting team in the country, one play of the week for you in Colorado. And I voted for that one. I voted for a different team than James Madison, but I did vote for that one. And And Travis Hunter, most electrifying player in the country. Shedeur Sanders is going to be a high draft pick. So it's at UCF. So I would, if I lived in that area, I would definitely go to that game. But they have a really tough path forward too. I mean, going to Florida, I know Florida is there's, it's kind of like the death march, if you will, right now for Billy Napier. But I think that could be a real competitive game. They've got some other challenging ones, but I think they're a really interesting, fascinating, fun team to watch. Um, and then, a couple others that are, somewhat off the radar, but I think are, fascinating. BYU. I think that was maybe one of the more surprising wins that I've seen is the way they were able to dominate Kansas State. I thought Kansas State was going to be the class of the Big 12, and to win 38-9 was something I didn't expect at all. And for them to start 4-0, very, very impressive. And then finally, Rutgers. This has been a great build for Greg Schiano because when he came there, I think they're outscored they lost 21 straight Big Ten games by a total of like 761-100. I mean, they were just obliterated by these teams, and it looked like they had no business being involved in the Big Ten. But he has built it up to the point now where they are a competitive football program, and they still have some warts. They're not going to go to the playoff, I can tell you that. But being where they are right now, 4-0, they have or 3-0, I'm sorry, and then they have some opponents coming up. Washington, at Nebraska, they play UCLA, they play Minnesota, Maryland, teams that I think that they could see eye to eye with. This is a team that's really surging, and I think the fan base that's kind of underrated a little bit. That once they get to a point where they're competitive in the Big Ten, game in, game out, winning some of these games, that they are they've kind of been in the shadows, but I think that they are a very vocal fan base. And if they can get Rutgers up to the 8-9 win area, they might be a team that people are going to start to want to follow. So in that New Jersey area, because there's really nobody else there. And so they kind of fill that college football vacuum. So those are the 9 teams. I don't think I left anybody out on the power conference front, and appreciate you sitting through my recap, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
No, that's all fascinating. I know Matt will go through our bowl projections and then to kind of a conference by conference breakdown here shortly. But we started to see a little bit of Illinois, a little bit of Indiana, a little bit of Rutgers in our bowl projections. I don't know if we've seen Pitt turn up yet in the Pop Tarts Bowl, but if they keep playing the way they are, you'd imagine they'll certainly end up there as well. And Scott, we really appreciate the time this morning. Everybody go check out the story that he just dictated to you. It's available on theathletic.com now. I hear, so we can go check it out, read what he's writing, and thank you again, Scott, for coming on with us this morning and joining the committee.
All right, thanks, Sam, for having me.